virus or computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter, are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. May God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station. Also one of the gears of the machine. Where information.
Calm down the now. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears, upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you bring the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You calm down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs, memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day, chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host Mark Snyder, and they had a very good archive of Dr. Jim Fetzer on just before I joined, so I wasn't sure if we were going to come on the air or not there, but that's Dr. Fetzer's great, man. You guys, if you haven't listened to his shows, you need to listen to Dr. Jim Fetzer, especially what he has to say about Sandy Hook. I find absolutely fascinating, as well as his talks on what really happened in the moon landings. Today, we got a 2-hour show. Frosty Wooldridge is going to be gone for the next until the fall. So I've got Solon and Stephen with me. And we're going to talk, first of all, about the New World Order, which is always an interesting topic. I try to stay on the Meyer material strictly, but occasionally I do get off on these tangents. but I think this is important. This is just some information that I've been talking about, and we'll probably spend about 15 minutes on that or so. The next thing I'm going to talk about during the first hour is the collapse of our Western civilization and the potential civil war in the United States. And I'm also going to talk about something called the Dark Star, which is discussed in the same contact report as the collapse of the U.S. Then in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about SFOS's early contacts. And the final 15 minutes of the first hour, I'm going to talk about what are called the creational natural laws. And I have a plan for the second hour, but I get a feeling that we probably won't even get through the plan for the first hour. So let me just say hello to Solon and Stephen. How are you guys today?
Hey, we're doing great. How about you?
Pretty good. You know, it's I don't know what it is. Every time I prepare to do a show, it's like the last half an hour just goes away, and I feel like I'm, frantic trying to get things all organized and get things going. Solon, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be on here.
Well, I'm glad you are. Stephen was able to contact FIGU Canada, and it looks like we're getting Michael Udibrook, and I never say his name right, on April the 6th. Have you heard any of his presentations, Solon?
Yes, I'm constantly recommending them to members within FIGU that are interested in some of the topics that he's gone over.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on for a regular basis. He has just a very profound, in-depth knowledge of a lot of different subjects in the Meyer material, and he's very knowledgeable as far as the German language too, I think.
Yep, very true.
Do you still have your friend he's really good with German? Does his name begin with an O, blonde-haired guy?
Yes, I still have him. I'm going to leave him kind of anonymous. I'm not sure how crazy he is about being in
that's right. He prefers to stay out of the limelight, so to speak, right?
Yeah, well, out of the light, yeah. It's kind of a rocky situation that he's in when it comes to speaking about these. So
no kidding.
I respect his decisions to be,
I think a lot of people, or not everybody, but I've run into a lot of different people that are interested in Meyer's material a whole lot and may be very knowledgeable, but sometimes they just prefer just to kind of stay in the background. I've noticed that.
Well, I mean, he's explained it to me to the point where I really understand. So, it has a lot to do with, a lot of this information is extremely controversial, and living here in the South, a lot of this stuff is like it's like completely against a lot of what we believe here.
I know.
You don't want to create discord within your family and neighborhood and whatnot, so sometimes it's best to stay out of the light.
Some of my posts on Facebook cause enough discord, and people block me, and I don't mean anything negative or by it, but you're right. I think this information is very controversial, and I think Stephen has even tried to get a hold of Stefan Molyneux, right?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that. It'd be interesting, and that would be steering a little bit outside the Meyer material as well, which I'm not like super duper dogmatic or anything. So
a lot of it's related to a lot of the current event type stuff, So.
Right, exactly.
Freedom of speech or whatever.
Freedom of speech, absolutely. Okay, now one of the things I see as this evil elite continues to do its thing, and I might have discussed this briefly on the last show, they want to make humanity genderless. And I think the authorities in the world, they want to transform the lower class into a group of androgynous human beings. And what I mean by the lower class is like 99% of us. They want to create, and this isn't the Meyer material, this is just my observations. They want to create two main groups in society. The first group, of course, is the elite. They're about 1% of the population. The second group, the main body of the population, is like 99% of us. And the elite, they want this other group to have no gender, no rights, and almost no ability for independent thinking. Eventually, the lower class will have no sex. The move is to recognize the transgender person. And I think this is a slow psychological preparation which will move the lower class into being androgynous. The elite are using the media to slowly brainwash the public, which is why we're hearing all this information about multiple gender pronouns, and we're hearing about how young boys are being given female hormones and young girls are being given male hormones. Transgender boys, even as through the college levels now, are allowed to compete against girls in athletic events. And I think some of the gay rights and women's liberation is an attack on marriage and preparing us for this removal of sex. And this is one of the several stages that the New World Order, I believe, has planned. They want to remove the family. They want to end normal childbirth. So childbirth will be brought about by artificial insemination. Normal procreation will probably at some point be outlawed, or we won't even be able to have normal procreation. Children will not be allowed to experience the normal bonding that takes place between the child and the parent. And this removal of gender, it affects our thinking a whole lot. So the removal of gender for this lower class will have a profound effect on thinking. So, for example, our radio show, we have 3 people. We have pretty much harmonious thinking, and that causes what's called constructive interference. And this means that the waves of our thoughts tend to amplify each other, and the effect of constructive interference takes place. And this can also take place between people of the opposite sex. Now, the global elite, they want to remove constructive interference in our thinking in the lower classes. So now you see the left will not tolerate discussion, like we're doing a discussion right now. You see them chanting or yelling continually instead of discussing things. Well, the chanting, the shouting people down, the interruptions are tactics that are being taught to the left by the elite. And the chants of the left reveal their intentions. And their thoughts, their intentions. For example, you've heard them say, no border, no wall, no USA at all. And eventually I predict that the controllers will invent a chant that will express their desire to remove masculinity. Already they're calling it toxic masculinity. And once this principle of constructive interference is removed in the lower classes, there's no more discussion, and there's no constructive interference between the man and the woman. The lower class will be even more dumbed down. And, for example, the perspective of the woman is something that cannot be achieved in a genderless society. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because I know the Meyer material says eventually the women will play a very strong role in our society, which maybe what I'm talking about, they're not going to be able to pull off. But I think their goal is to create a genderless society in this lower class that will remove the natural synergy of the male and the female thinking. And the male
is that for control, Mark?
I think
in your
so.
eyes?
In my eyes, that's what's going on. And so they want a public that is submissive. And Billy tells us never to be submissive. We're told that independent thinking is what allows for our evolution, and the media doesn't want to allow independent thinking. So it'll be interesting. We've also heard about the rise of the robot people. Well, wouldn't it be, I could see that kind of removing gender also to play a role in the rise of the robot people, maybe. A speculation.
I see this kind of tying more into like civil unrest in America. If you start affecting people's freedom, we have a tendency we like our standard of living that we're in right now, and if we start removing our personal freedoms, I can see people rising up against that. But an interesting thing, like the wars that we're in, it really hasn't affected most Americans versus years ago. If you had rationing going on, I mean, people were affected by the war effort. But today's people's freedom just don't seem to be affected by that, so they really don't notice the extent that our military is doing for them.
Well, the other thing, as far as the war on freedom, is I think the large corporations that own Twitter and Facebook and Google are now starting to stop the independent thinking. They're starting to stop the conservative point of view, and they're kind of squelching that. And I don't know if you guys have read or watched any of I might have sent you guys some links on Joe Rogan and Alex Jones. That was the whole talk those two had, and the guy named Tim Pool, which would be another great guy to get for the show, by the way, Stephen, if you want to write that down. Tim Pool. Yep. He's a blogger. He's actually kind of on the left, but he's very free speech. Now, Solon, are you aware of any of this struggle that's going on? Because what's happening is people are getting banned from Twitter. Now, I just don't engage in Twitter, so it doesn't really affect me. But people are getting banned on Twitter and Facebook because they express kind of if they express something that's a little pro more towards the right, they tend to get banned. Have you heard of any of this?
Yes. It seems that things that are too controversial, or I kind of feel like what's going on is there's a lot of radicalism going on, where people are becoming grouping up in some of these major ideas, and they're really not understanding the true problem, or they just lack the understanding of what's going on as a whole, and they're all grouping up together, and like you said, I think there's their agenda that they're trying to accomplish. And
well, it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out, but it's just something that I'm kind of watching myself. The other thing that I wanted to chat about is Contact Report 544, which I looked at again, and that's the one that says the U.S. government will start to fall apart in 2020. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yes.
Solon, have you read this in any depth yet?
Well, I've done a lot of thinking about it. I think it was also stated that after I don't know if it's 2020 or 2021, that the economy would also collapse.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I think maybe those two go hand in hand.
Wow, that will be very, very interesting. Send me a link on that when you get a chance, too.
Okay.
Now, what this report interestingly says, it starts out talking about Mitt Romney. If you guys know him, he's a Republican, so he would be considered on the right. Well, Billy is saying that this guy is a psychopath. And psychopath means that you have a chronic mental disorder that may exhibit violent or abnormal social behavior. So Billy's telling us to watch out for Romney, that he is very shifty, he's very dishonest, and that's in this Contact Report 544. Now, Billy also makes reference to his great trip on the mothership in 1975, and I know you're familiar with that, right, Solon?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
It's Contact Report 30?
I
think
31.
31, maybe?
31. Yeah, I think it's 31, actually. I know that I think it might have started in 30 and then also went to 31.
You know, the one thing I remember from that Contact Report is that when they jump, you know, when, for example, let me just set the stage here a little bit. In 1975, Billy, well, in the 70s, Billy started to get these first telepathic contacts from a woman named Semyasi. I probably don't pronounce her name right still. But she would land her ship there in Schmidruti, Switzerland. In that area, Billy would ride his moped out to a specific location. She would land her ship right there in the middle of the day. And that's where Billy started getting all of his photographs of her ship. She would come out of the ship, talk to him about various topics, and then he would write it down what she said. Now, I've simplified it. It was more complicated than that. He would actually get a telepathic message from her ship later that he would write down, and I think it was kind of a telepathic message that was kind of in these symbols, which he would then incredibly with one hand type at 60 words a minute and type all this down, and that's what became the Contact Reports. And in one of those examples, Billy was told that she would take him for a ride on her what was called a beam ship, which is kind of a typical flying saucer kind of thing. And Billy went throughout the solar system, but when they got out to Jupiter, there was this gigantic thing about 30,000 feet in diameter that Billy saw, which was the mothership, and Semyasi flew right into this thing with her ship, and Billy went up to the very top of this thing, which had a very unusual shape, and he talked to the leader of the what they call the Ishwish, which is their leader, their king of wisdom. He was commanding the ship, and Billy was going to get the opportunity to go around our galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy. So one of the things they would do is this really interesting jump when they would move from one star system to another. It was really bizarre, like everything would just for an instant become I don't know, I just describe it as everything in the ship would become into this energetic state, and then the jump would end, and then they would materialize again. And Billy would always explain that while they were in that dematerialized state, that he felt this joy, this incredible feeling of peace. Do you remember that, Solon? You remember that, don't you?
Yeah, I'm like smiling, recalling it. Yeah.
I remember we did a discussion where you talked about the Empfinden, because Billy kept repeating that word, that German word, right?
He did more when he was in the presence of the Pleiadians, more so during the jump time.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's right. That's right. Because when the jump was over, when they made the longer and longer and longer jumps, he was in the state for a longer time. And then when they would come back in the material existence, he was like kind of devastated, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was he started to notice that something was a little off when they would come, when the jumps would happen. I won't ever forget, they said, he was like, some of our people never even notice it. We're kind of fascinated that you even realize that sometimes we even have to explain it to some of our people. And I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Because for Billy, it was an incredible experience, right?
Oh, yeah. Especially when they did that. I think it was a 7-minute jump or
something like that.
Yeah. And oh, man, his thought process was pretty rapid and it was pretty deep. It was beautiful in a sense, too.
Right. So the reason I got off on this is because during that great trip in 1975, he got some of this information from Ptah that the USA could come to an end after 2020. So he heard that back in 75. So here we are. How many years? 25, 35. We're 40, over 40 years. Was that over 40 years ago? And now we're starting to see this come to fruition. So what I think a lot of us folks in the Meyer material are doing is looking at these reports and then trying to think, wow, are we there? Do you think we're there, Solon? Do you think we're on the verge? Or how do you see it?
I mean, in so many words, we are heading that direction. I don't, I don't want to say we're there because I'm always wanting to be optimistic that maybe we can change, but I haven't seen anything regarding it. So
not real significant change. I think we're better economically with some of the decisions that Trump has put in place, but we're worse off in terms of the national divide, the controversy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, with indifference and the lack of thinking and studying and gathering knowledge, yeah, we're deteriorating in a lot of this.
Stephen, do you feel like we're deteriorating as well?
Well, I look at it like this. If my personal budget was in the shape that our national debt is in, even if I'm making any progress, it'd still be on the loser end of the deal. So I don't know how you get out of this without, problems.
Here's what it says in the contact report. But if in relation to the USA, the gigantic mountain of national debt of now more than $16 trillion is now considering, which can no longer be repaid, and for which the ongoing interests can hardly even be serviced, he says.
So cause and effect says, and it makes sense that something is going to break.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when.
It does feel like something is going to break.
I just want to add that that's what I was talking about when I was talking about after the year 2020, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
That would just, the debt will just get out of control and the interest rate will go up and it'll just be a climbing house of debt card that'll fall on us.
A very interesting thing happened in this contract report. He said, indeed, you have allowed me to undertake an attempt to get in touch with the U.S. government. So at this time, Billy tried to get in touch with the U.S. government via someone named L, who was previously employed by the CIA, but it never did accomplish much, evidently. And I had forgotten about this.
Well, yeah, the reason why it never happened was because the Plejadians realized that their true intent was to basically take over their ships and all their technology. They had really no interest in listening. They were more about trying to gain their technology.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
It really doesn't. I read that. I was like, well, that's definitely believable.
So anyway, that is I wanted to revisit that because it kind of sparked a few thoughts. Now, I don't know what to think about things right now in terms of where we're at as a country. He did say one thing that gave me a little hope here. He said, thus, with the collapse of the USA, only two possibilities can be considered, whereby with the one it boils down to a dictatorship with evil reprisals and great gewalt, while the other possibility may be a new reconstruction if people who are fundamentally conscious of their responsibilities attain government and really do everything to bring about an effective and valuable new start. So I see some of that with Trump. You know, some good things, but he seems to be allowing so many of the negative, bad advisors to have impact on him that it's very strange, at least when I look at the situation. Any thoughts, comments?
Well, I've always saw Trump as like a third party, and but he is under the Republican Party, so I feel like he's definitely being influenced in that direction.
Mm-hmm. I agree too. So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover as far as the New World Order and the collapse of Western civilization. The other thing that we can talk about from Contact Report 544, I'm not real prepared to talk about it, is the dark star. Are you familiar with the fact that our solar system has a binary twin? Are either one of you guys familiar with that?
I'm missing a little bit.
The other thing that's very interesting that I read is that there is a string of meteors that have been catapulted out of the Oort cloud. This dark star, excuse me, that I'm talking about, it is the twin. It's a binary twin to our soul, what they call the soul star, our sun. It's 10 times smaller than our sun, and it's a dark star. I mean, it doesn't really give much light out. It's maybe a dark reddish light if you got close enough to see it. And it has some planets around it, but it also had meteors surrounding it. And these meteors have, within recent times, been catapulted into our part of the solar system. So that's why we're starting to see more meteors now. So I thought that was really interesting. It doesn't, I don't think it's the red meteor yet, which you guys, I'm sure you've heard of the red meteor, right?
The destroyer.
Yeah, the destroyer. That's supposed to come when? 2030?
No, I think it was moved at one point, so it would come later.
Okay.
So I think it's been pushed back a lot further than that. Or you're talking about, I think you're talking about like Titus or something like that, or
Apophis. Yeah.
That's going to come in 2030, somewhere around there.
Oh, God. More good news, man. I'm depressed myself.
Well, the interesting thing is that Russia's aware of this and are basically on top of trying to, make sure it doesn't hit or have a devastating effect when it hits the Earth, or maybe move it.
Putin, I know he's done some bad things, and I know he is even sometimes suppressing people within his own country right now, but I do not see him as a big threat. I think he is a clear thinker, and for example, with this whole Apophis thing, I think pretty much only Russia is doing anything about it, right?
I do believe the U.S., they are also working with some massive people as well.
Okay.
So I wouldn't, and I don't. When I think of Russia, I don't necessarily just think of Putin. Like, there's a lot of great people in there, and like they have a great culture. So
I think they're a great culture. I kind of admire the Russians personally.
Yeah, I was actually doing some history on them, and yeah, they're pretty strong-minded people. Not even just like when you look at some of the wars they went through. Like, nations would go in there and get too cold and end up losing people.
Exactly.
And yet these people lived through this, so it's like pretty durable people in there.
Oh, very durable. And I've met Russian people, worked with some Russian people, and they're smart too. They're real smart. Sure. Yeah, I'm very impressed with some of this. So I don't buy the whole Russian collusion thing. That is the other thing that's going on now. So that's the dark star. Now, Solon, I know you had sent me something, and I really hadn't had too much of a chance to look at it yet. So,
yeah, are you talking about this thing dealing with overpopulation?
Is that what you called your document have you?
Well, it came from a contact note where it was talking about overpopulation.
Okay.
And yeah, it's massive. I mean, there's so much to talk about in this. And,
we'll start somewhere. Just throw a dart at something.
Well, I just kind of like start at the first part is that for one thing, we as a total global system don't actually know how many people there actually are on this planet.
Right.
And there was a calculation that was done. I'm not exactly sure when it was actually stated in here, but there was a calculation done, and based off this calculation, that's what they're saying that the birth rate is climbing at. But in reality, what they're saying doesn't even match up with what is going on, which the actual number. So that's already one problem by itself. You know what I mean? That we don't even know the true number. So it's like when you start making calculations of who needs what and how much, you don't even compute the correct numbers. And this is only going to get worse and worse as time grows, or I should say as time passes.
Well, that's a very true statement. It's very the whole overpopulation thing is so complicated and so profound. And most people say, well, you can fit all the world into Texas, and they think there's 7 billion. So a lot of people say there's 7.5 billion. So let's just use that number, and we try to fit all the people. Literally, if you just take the space, they'll fit in Texas. But let's say, for example, and I know I've covered this before, but if each person gets to eat basically one cow in their lifetime, a cow has about 500 pounds of beef. Like a 1,200 pound steer is worth about 500 pounds of beef after you cut the bone and the gristle and all the other parts off. And for example, a person that lives 100 years could eat only 5 pounds of beef a year, and that would be their 500 pounds of beef. Boom, done. Or if they eat 10 pounds of beef a year, and you only live 50 years, well, there's your 500 pounds of beef. So, and if you allocate 2 acres per cow, so that's a good rule of thumb, about 2 acres per cow. That's 14 billion acres, 7 times 2 acres. 14 billion acres, which I've done the math before. That's about 21 million square miles that would be taken up just to feed the whole earth a little bit of beef. You know what I'm saying, Solon? I mean, that's, if we don't use factory farming, and that's why we're starting to use factory farming. And I think what we're seeing with factory farming is the slow. I really think that the meat that comes out of a lot of the factory farming is extremely unhealthy. And I think it's affecting us all in ways that we're not even completely aware of yet. Either one of you guys want to comment on that?
I don't have knowledge on that.
Well, it's actually a lot of that's covered in this document. I mean,
oh, really?
I want to say so much, but it's a lot of information. I mean, he actually goes into the fact that we are polluting our environment in ways that I wasn't even. I mean, I've heard of them, but he explained them thoroughly, like through the plastics and the microplastics that are making its way not only into the rivers but into our soils, and then the pollution from the airplanes and from the cars.
Oh yeah.
I mean, at one point we put lead in the gas, so that's probably all over the place too. I mean, and that's just one thing. And then we got the nuclear bombs and all that stuff we're eating, and then oh God, I could go on and on and on.
It can really kind of make you a little depressed.
Yeah, so
look at it the wrong way.
Well, I will say when I read the first 5, I was depressed. I was like, I got to quit reading this because I'm too much to burden. And but I really want to understand this stuff, and I really feel like it's going to take me a lot of time because I want to like look a lot of this up. But there's a lot of stuff in here that we're just not aware of. Like when I say the word microplastics, some of those get breaking down into like nanoparticles, which can't even be filtered by anything we have.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. And so when you started talking about what you were talking about in the beginning of the show, that,
we're making ourselves genderless because of plastics, right?
Yes. And one of the things that's in plastic is estrogen.
Yes.
Yes. So overall, we are actually consuming more estrogen than we ever have before. In terms of what we know about our history, that is, and I think it's kind of a scary situation that we placed ourselves in.
So it's plastics that increase the estrogen. I think soy has a effect with increasing our estrogen. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, not to sound racist or anything, but I don't think white people should be eating soy at all. And I know that the Asian people can eat some of it to an extent. It's a lot like we can drink milk and they can't because we, developed the ability to process lactose and whatnot. Oh. And they built the tolerance to be able to eat some of the soy.
Wow.
So yeah, there is that. The genetics plays a role in some of this, so you can't just general blanket statement some of that. But yeah, it does contain estrogen. But there's other foods that do as well. But a lot of it can be offset. But when you're talking about these microplastics, it's like we can't filter them. So and this is a toxic that causes all kinds of other issues from hair loss to damaging the inner organs of us. I mean, you've seen those documentaries where the birds are feeding their offspring plastics, right?
Oh, I know. It's so sad. And I saw a thing not long ago about some of the whales that are eating their plastic things, like floating in the ocean, and then they end up dying, and they've got like 100 pounds of plastic in their stomach and stuff like that. It's so sick. And, people say, well, what does this have to do with overpopulation? Because the more and more people we get, the more and more plastic we get. So we probably should absolutely make the humongous effort to stop producing plastics, right?
Well, I would say at this point, probably yes. But in all honesty, it's like we need to leave anything oil-based alone in general. I mean, but how are we going to feed people? I mean, there's so many problems. But
no, you bring up a very interesting point, because the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the AOC lady, that says, "Oh, we're going to stop all." Like if she became president, in theory, she's going to stop all burning of fossil fuels. So everyone's going to go. I don't know how it's going to happen. Of course, it's not feasible. How are we all going to go to electric cars immediately? That's crazy. It's going to bankrupt everything. But we probably need to. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there are some alternatives. This is actually a possible solution, but a lot of things have to change for it. In here, Billy literally says that all cars should be banned. So we will stop. Yes, except for commercial cars.
Oh, you're kidding.
Combustible engines, that is. Yes. So I guess the electric
I would love to see that contact report. Send me that link too. You have to send me 100 links after that.
That's in there. Hold on, I'll tell you the number here. There's like 15 of them. I have it marked. Just give me a quick second here.
So he says it in that document you're talking about.
Yes. This thing has a lot, and it's pretty in depth, and I think that a lot of people should study this. The problem is that what I have is a terrible translation.
Right. It's not perfect. It's not. You don't even think it's a good translation?
Honestly, no. I've caught so many errors in it, and I'm like, no, and I'm like, and yet people sing this, but it gives you a really good idea of just of what's being talked about here. So I kind of feel like, well, maybe it's not that bad, but
That's the dilemma we're in with the Meyer material, isn't it?
it really is. Yes, it really is. The German language is, I'm constantly saying this, but I find it to be way more superior than the English language. And it's the weird part is when I go back and look at some of the high English, old English.
Yeah.
It is extremely similar to German. I actually have this China where it has like the old Lord's Prayer on there, and it has what, to me, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, this looks like some of it, like Dinah. It says Dinah, and I'm like, wow, it looks just like Dinah. But so I started to see that. I was actually kind of caught off guard because I wasn't prepared to see something religious in one sense, and also of a older style language that it is called English.
I got a question for you guys.
Good.
How did the play yarn, if you guys are aware, progress from to where they're at for their travel? Does that make sense? So did they go through a stage of combustion engines, or did they skip that? Is this something unique to us, or is this standard?
To give you an idea how advanced they are, and so long, correct me if anything I say is a little off or whatever, but my understanding is that 230,000 years ago, a guy named Asael, who was the king of wisdom, their king, their Ishwish, their leader, brought X number of people from Lyra Vega to the star system, the Pleiadian star system. 230,000 years ago, they could jump from star to star. The Pleiadian could. That blows my mind, first of all. So I can't even start to guess on how long ago they were just driving cars. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, how do we get from where we're at to away from this, reliance on this type of stuff? I mean, how do we go to the next fuel source, if you will, and how's that transition made?
So 230,000 years ago, I'm sure they weren't driving cars. They were more advanced than that. So that shows you how backward we are.
I just feel like at one point we used to have, I shouldn't say we, I don't know if it was ever an earthly thing, that there were UFOs. I mean, so I imagine if we wouldn't have lost a lot of that stuff, destroyed a planet, migrated off another one, and then I don't think that they also had the genetic disposition that we have as well, right?
Now explain. Oh, you mean as far as our shortened lifespan?
Yeah, I don't think they ever went through that.
No, they didn't.
They left. Yeah, so there's so many things extra that we have that they just didn't have.
Well, that's a hell of a detriment, really.
I feel like eating a gun, man.
I mean, that's like, you're living 10%, even if you live to 100.
Yeah.
You live 10% of their lifetime. I mean, can you imagine if you live 90% longer what you could accomplish?
Can you imagine if you lived to be 1,000 years old, you would feel like at 100 you were just barely getting your, just barely starting to understand what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine if a person like Nikola Tesla would have lived, just 200 more years, we would have wireless technology in terms of energy.
That's huge when you think about it.
Yeah.
A 100-year-old person's like a 10-year-old.
Exactly. Exactly. Try to consider that.
Well, what's interesting is that the Pleiadian, they study for 70 years, and they don't even get married till after that. Well on after that.
Like,
it's not. So
that's incredible.
We look at 7 years old as like old, and they look at it as like you're still like becoming an adult. You're not even there yet.
No wonder these problems seem so insurmountable, because we're like infants.
Yeah.
We really are, though. I mean, as I get older, I feel like I just don't have enough time to study one subject enough.
That's one of the reasons I kind of held off on the German a little bit, because I just had to even come to an understanding enough, like from the might of thoughts, just so I can deal with some of these, issues of controlling my negative thinking. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
It's important.
It's so important. My goodness. But
And
go ahead.
good. Well, I was actually talking to a friend about this, and I find that I ask things in the negative sense. Like, for instance, I'll be like, "You don't like her, do you?" And I don't mean that in a suggestive way that you don't like her, but it's a question, and I realize like how unhealthy that is, because I'm instantly make you think it in a negative sense.
Wow, that is profound. That is exactly what the issue is. We are indoctrinated. Our subconscious is completely schooled from a very, very young age to think in terms of negativity. So it's natural. You know, I mean, you want to hear something strange that I did yesterday? This goes to show you how I had a bad dream in the morning, and I was yelling in the morning, wasn't this morning? I think it was the day before. I don't even know what I was dreaming. I don't. Isn't that hilarious? I mean, so my subconscious is really struggling with something. I don't know what it is. I can only guess.
Well, you
Isn't that strange? That's
no, not necessarily. Like, I had, well, I don't know how much I want to discuss on my dream, but I've had dreams where I've woken up and couldn't go back to sleep because they impacted me so bad.
Really?
Yeah, and then later I would find out exactly what it meant, and it's just wow.
Did you figure it out yourself?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Well, it had a lot to do with me not wanting to deal with the surroundings around me.
Wow.
And so if you don't deal with it while you're awake, you deal with it. You eventually will always deal with the problem.
And that is so profound. You should write that down, and we should repeat that every show. Because that's exactly what I'm doing, I think. There's something I'll just say, well, I'm just going to set that aside for a while. So when do you deal with it? You deal with it in your sleep, right?
Yeah. Well, you subconsciously, you're always. I mean, that's what we're here to do, is to. I mean, I don't want to say deal with problems, but we're here to learn and to figure things out.
Right. And
problems arise when that takes place, which is one of the things you wanted to talk about, was the striving for oneself and the duties for oneself, and that's part of it.
Oh yeah, that is one of the things I wanted to talk about, is fulfilling our duty to ourselves.
Well, that's it. When we run into a problem, I mean, that's it. I mean, and there's so many people. I'm going to use an example, and this is probably because it's so crazy to me. But there was a person whose house kind of got infected with some, we'll just say, some creatures that live in your bed, if you know what I mean.
Oh no! Have you ever seen the show about the people that are called hoarders? There's a whole program on that.
Dude,
have you ever heard of this?
Man, I don't know what to say. Yeah, I've seen it. I'm trying not to comment.
Like, their whole house fills up with garbage, and then there's insects, and I mean, they can't. They I don't know. It's some kind of disorder, I guess, mentally or something. But go ahead.
I just don't see how something doesn't fire off, because it's weird, and I want to use this as an example that kind of gives people maybe the mindset that I'm in. I went to someone's house, and I had to put something in the cooler when they had the cooler in their garage.
Gosh. And
I went out in their garage, and they had clothes all over the floor, and I instantly started getting really uncomfortable and was freaking out. Like, why are there clothes all over the floor here? And I'm with another guy, and we go open up the cooler, and there's empty boxes, and he's all mad about the empty boxes. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you kind of want to pack your cooler up full of stuff, because it'll actually use less energy to keep it cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even caring about that. And and I looked to him, and I'm like, Dad, look at all these clothes on the ground. He's like, that's not a big deal. And I'm like, what? I'm freaking out inside about it.
That's so fun. Well, the whole deal, and I think when we get back, maybe we can, I know the break should be coming soon. We should start to talk about the might of thoughts, maybe. And maybe we can also talk about the creational natural laws, because I think it kind of fits in.
Oh, yeah.
With this whole thing.
I do want to add, that was number 10 on this list about him talking about the cars. I found it here, so I'll let you know.
Number 10, what do you mean?
Within this contact, which, let me make sure I say the right number. It is contact 712.
Okay.
There's like a list of things he talks about with overpopulation. And remember I told you about the banning of the car? Well, that's number 10 on here. He goes into the methane.
Banning cars. Banning cars is number 10.
He said, would have to be banned in such vehicles and only allow those who need commercial vehicles.
See, now, like, I can work completely on the internet now. Like, I can do my job totally. Oh, okay, we'll be back in 5 minutes, folks. Talk to you shortly. So we will go on break for the next 5 minutes. And just a second, I am going to... So we can hear the music too. I'm going to do something. Just bear with me. This will help a little bit. Also for the archive. I can work completely on the internet now. Like, I can do my job totally. Oh, okay. We'll be back in 5 minutes, folks. Talk to you shortly. So we will go on break for the next 5 minutes. And just a second. I am going to... So we can hear the music too. I'm going to do something. Just bear with me.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Also for the
right back after this message.
She travels to Earth through the rainbow crystal bubbles from the furthest reaches of space and time, across the dimensions, through the elements, and in harmony with the colors of the universe. Through her mastery of abstract stream of consciousness malapropisms, she weaves a web of comic, satiric, cosmic conversation. Her subjects can range from Norman, the goose next door, to astrology and earth changes, and into the deep recesses of the soul matrix. She holds a wealth of knowledge on herbs, plants, and astrology. Join Mona and her guests on adventures of a feral hippie. She touches the earthly radio waves 5 days a week at 2 p.m. Monday to Friday on Studio B at Revolution Radio.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Are you curious about the origins of the human race? Join me, Gavin McCall, and a variety of guests on Ancient Humans, where we decipher world events, explore scientific theories, personal stories, myths, mysteries, and lore about the history of the human race.
Hi everybody, it's me, the Fedge, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fed, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs, memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day, chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. We are talking about the Billy Meyer case. We've got Solon and Stephen on the line. I'm going to take us back to Billy's early life just for a little bit here, and then we can catch back up with our discussion from the first hour. On February 3rd in 1941, when Billy was just turned 4 years old, he lived in a place called Niederflocks, 1253 Niederflocks, which I guess was the road that he lived on. And that was a short distance from a town called Bulak, Switzerland. And this is back in 1941. And this little town was surrounded by what's called the Eichenmoser and Bruder Mountains. And there are wide forests and extensive meadows. And this was when Billy's spiritual experiences began when he was living in Niederflocks / Bulak. Now Bulak is a municipality in Switzerland in the canton of Zurich. And on a mild night in May, it was 1941, Billy crawled out a lower window in his bedroom and he looked up at a beautiful starry night, and he said, "My life is made out of the love of creation." So these words were forming on his lips, and he was getting these impulses from somewhere. And later he recognized the impulses as impulses what are called from the storage banks. Our universe has storage banks. So does the galaxy, the solar system, the planet has storage banks. And we get impulses from these storage banks. So this was about 3 a.m. one morning on a mild night in May, back in 1941, Billy went outside and looked up at a beautiful starry night, and he said he had very interesting things come out of his mouth. He said that he recognized that the stars emitted a light in the visible spectrum, but however, there was a light of true love which remained invisible and creational, he said. And he felt this unfamiliar longing for the vast distances and the faraway worlds. And then suddenly, this 3-year-old boy says, since ancient times, you've lived among the stars. And he said suddenly he knew who he was and what his mission on the earth was. And Billy started to get telepathic messages after this point. So this was the next year, in 1942, he was 5 years old, and he started to get these telepathic messages from this man named Svath. And Billy could see Svath's face in his mind's eye. So he was eventually told to go out a specific place, and Svath's silvery pear-shaped craft came out of the air and landed, and out stepped Svath, who had a white hair and a beard, something that looked like a diver's suit on, and Billy was lifted up into the ship, and it felt as he was lifted up by ghostly hands. And then eventually the ship was taken up something like 70,000 meters into the air. And one of the things that Svath told Billy is that in his previous lives, he had been the people that we call Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And in each one of these previous lives, he taught something called the teaching of the Spirit. And evidently Svath had known him in one of Billy's previous lives. And in one of these previous lives, he was a teacher named Nocodemia. So Svath visited Billy to prepare his teacher for another lifetime as a teacher. And one of the things that Svath did is he placed a device on Billy's head that had many wires on it. And from that, Billy got this wellspring of knowledge. And he felt these very unusual forces penetrating into him. And suddenly he knew events that would take place in the future. And Svath explained to him that Billy's abilities from previous lives were awakened so that he would be prepared for his coming mission. And one of the things that Billy would teach in his coming mission is something called the creational natural laws, and I think it's real important that we cover these on the show. And this first law is the law of love, and this is the highest form of love. It's called an effective love. It's not a romantic love. Billy has a writing called Love Letter 27, which says, love is the highest principle in all creation, and through it everything exists in absolute logic. So love is very logical, it's very stable, and it's the first creational natural law. And I wonder if Stephen or Solon or both of you guys could comment a little bit on the first creational natural law, love. Solon, let's begin with you. You're an expert.
I don't know about being an expert in this. There's like a whole book on this.
What is it, Love Letter 27?
I don't know what that is. I don't know what you're referring to, actually.
You're not aware of that?
Love Letter 37?
27.
27? No, sir. I've never heard this.
Dude, we have to have. We'll do a whole show on what I know is in that, which is
okay. Is that Meyer?
Huh?
Or is this a separate book, or is this something written by Meyer? I've never heard of this.
This is Meyer.
Really?
His most important writing, I think.
Well, there's so many of those.
It's really a great. I used to quote from it all the time.
Yeah, I definitely know that Love Binds Us.
What was that?
Love Binds Us.
Is that a book, or is that a?
Oh, that's just a law. Like I know that there's three things that kind of make up everything, and I know one of them is love.
You know, I distracted you. You had a line of thought. You said something about a book.
Yeah, there's the Leba der Gesetze, I think it is, the Law of Love.
Oh, really?
I think I said it backwards, actually.
See, I'm not familiar with that. I may have heard of that, but I'm not familiar with it at all.
Yes, like I said, there's like a whole book written on this Law of Love by Billy. So and I have not studied it enough in depth to even say two words. So I always
Here's something that Billy says in that Love Letter 27. He says, every tiny plant and every tiny animal fulfills its purpose in love, which I think is one of the most beautiful, profound statements. And whenever I get thinking negative, besides stuff from the Might of Thoughts, I quote from Love Letter 27.
That's awesome, actually.
It's profound. I mean, even that thing I quoted earlier that says, love is the highest principle in all creation. And through it, everything exists in absolute logic. So I wanted to get to the creational natural laws. We're on creational law 1, but maybe we better make a little side tangent into what the creation is. Stephen, do you want to comment on any of this? I'll put you on the spot.
Oh, sure. I would say that, to me, the law of love is like the basic elemental thing of life, the reason for life.
Oh, really? That's good. I like that.
Yeah. It's like the most important thing, you know? I mean, if everything boils down to that, and the importance of it, that's why our whole creation works on it.
You know, one thing that Semyasi said to Billy that, like, about made me fall down out of my chair when I read it. She said, love and wisdom go together. Mm-hmm. And the creation and its laws are love and wisdom at the same time. So there's evidently the other side of love is wisdom. Mm-hmm. And the other side of wisdom is love. Have you ever thought of it that way, Solon?
I actually understand that better than... Yes, I have thought deeply about this. You know, if we look at a kid, typically we typically have love for kids, of course. I think that's kind of a natural thing built into almost all of us, maybe not all, but and we know that if they do this or that, and we want to, some parents want to protect their kids so they don't ever try to commit any of these mistakes because they love them so much. Like it's like overburdening them where they can't even experience things. And so I kind of feel like that's sometimes what this is. It's like, you know, the ability to allow someone to make a mistake and then you kind of forgive them because, you know, you love them for no matter their mistakes or whatever, you know.
That's a very good point. And I wanted to also get back to the whole idea of the creation. Mm-hmm. Because what is the creation?
Sure.
Yep. So, okay, let me put it this way. And it'd be a good thing for you to either discuss or debate. The Schöpfung or the Schöpfung is one term for this. The other thing that we say is Wesenheiten, which is a living being without a self-determining possibility for evolution. In other words, the creation doesn't really, in terms of its evolution, it has only a minor self-determination in its evolution. And so it evolves according to some fixed pattern. So it goes through an expansion phase of 155 trillion years, and then a contraction phase of 155 trillion years, and then it goes into a kind of a sleep phase for a certain amount of time. And at that point, I think it basically must go through something like a Big Bang again, and it recreates itself. But so what I try to do a lot of times is, in my mind, try to understand more what creation is. And so if I look at a tree, a very neutral thing, but experts will tell you, and so on, you're kind of an expert on the trees, they do kind of have a male and a female, but it's not obvious. So I don't think of them as being male or female. And they have. I will
say.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that it's unobvious to an unskilled eye.
Yes. Like I can't tell a male tree from a female tree.
Well, sometimes it's not necessarily just that, but it's also the one produces fruit and the other one just produces the stamen or the pollen.
Oh, is that right? Do only the female tree produce fruit?
Yes, typically, yes.
I did not know that.
So that's one way you can tell.
Wow, that's really
But that's not a blanket statement for all trees, because all of them have their own. They're all. I wouldn't say they're all, but there's difference because some have both male and female, but they require the bee to transfer the pollen.
Oh, now that's interesting. So the bee is actually fertilizing the tree, kind of?
Oh, man, yes. If people would only understand how important the bees are, especially for food and fruits. Oh, man, it's important.
That's so interesting.
Their survival is very important.
Wow.
They're dying off.
And creation is interdependent like that, right?
Of course, yes. So they've evolved. These trees have evolved with the insects as well to have this connection with one another. Matter of fact, certain trees, when they hear the flapping of the wings, the vibrations from the bees themselves will open up. And then you have some that are like almost like self-aware. It's like they only open up. Their flowers will open up during the sunlight, and they'll close whenever it's nighttime. It's beautiful to see those.
So the tree and the bee both have a spirit form then.
It's very different. One's impulse and one's instinct.
That's so interesting. So this creation that we live in, every living thing has a fragment of it as their spirit form. So every human, every plant, every animal has this. And what's the German term for fragment?
I don't know.
Yeah, you know. You're that German expert. Come on. Tellstock.
I'm not an expert.
Yes,
I'm a learner of the language.
Tellstock. That I remembered.
That's part piece. Yeah, okay. Tellstock. Yeah, part piece.
So
I didn't know fragment was one you could use for that. So that's something I just learned.
Okay. But you know that term very well.
Yeah, well, I use it as part piece because that's literally the two words.
Oh.
It was like part, and Stück is like a piece of it, like you break off.
You're starting to think in German now, right?
Yeah, man, it's funny.
So you come around the corner, so to speak.
I guess. Yeah. Sure.
So the bee fertilizes the tree. The tree can sense or hear the flapping of the bee's wings, and it opens part of itself up so it can be fertilized?
Yeah, so can I explain this?
Sure.
I guess you're fine.
Yeah.
So with the tree, it's sensing the vibrations, and that's what I say it's an impulse base. It's sensing the vibration of the wings, this beautiful music that it's making, and then it'll almost produce some nectar. And all trees are very different, of course. This is not a blanket statement for all of them. And the bee will then go in there because he will smell it and he'll get the impulse. Oh, I'm hungry. And he'll go in there and he'll get all this nectar. And by doing that, the plant also has pollens around the flower. And then another one will open up and he'll go over there and then he just pollinated 2 flowers. So he took this pollen, which is like the male product from the stamen and gave it to the females, which has the ovaries and whatnot. And that'll become fruit later.
So every tiny plant, every tiny animal fulfills its purpose in love. So you gave a literal example of that.
Awesome.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
Is there a kind of consciousness is there an impulse-based consciousness in the plant?
Well, that's pretty much what they call it, is an impulse consciousness.
Okay.
And what the human has is a conscious consciousness. We're like aware of being aware. That's very strange.
It is very strange because our spirit form is not completely conscious right now, right?
No. Well, no, not at this stage of our.
So it's remembering everything that we say, everything that we do. It's going to be able, when it leaves our body, to take with it the material consciousness, and it's going to be able to review our life and create all these evolutive values, create a new consciousness, a new personality, and incarnate us again. But it's not really, it's almost like functioning on automatic or something in some ways. Is that right?
So within the human being, we have our own storage banks already, and we tap into them, and they come through in impulses, which I was talking with Stephen.
Right.
Whenever you're learning something or whenever you're studying something, you'll get like, oh, this, so that the light bulb moment kind of goes off, and you get these ideas and yada yada yada. And that comes forth from the apparently the subconscious stores the storage banks.
So the subconscious is programmed with all the evolutive values of our previous life. Right?
Exactly.
And I think it sometimes impulses us, but I think we also sometimes get impulses from our spirit form as well, right? Didn't Semyase say every human has within them a spirit form that never sleeps, that never dies, that will tell you if your thinking is right or wrong, if you've learned to pay attention to it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's somehow giving us this indicator, like when we're wrong or when we're right. It's kind of letting us know some way. I always thought maybe our feelings would be affected by that.
Well, our feelings tell us whether or not our thoughts are going in the wrong direction. Or in the right direction, because you feel both, of course.
Feelings grow out of the thoughts, usually, right?
Yes, almost always. With a thought, you will get a feeling. And then you go back to the thought.
And one of the things I've been repeating over and over again, in terms of my meditations or what I'm aware of, is that the thoughts, like if we have negative thoughts, and they continue to be negative, our feelings will become increasingly negative, and our feelings will transmit themselves into the psyche, and eventually we can make our psyche disturbed.
Yes.
Because of our negative feelings. Now, likewise, I think if we transmit good feelings, wholesome, neutral, positive, equalized, balanced feelings to the psyche, it can become stabilized and strengthened, for lack of a better word.
Well, it's the thoughts, but yes. So you said the feelings. We need positive feelings, but we need positive thoughts.
It's really interesting because I think it all is I mean, the feelings come from the thoughts. But I was specific. Gosh, I'm looking in my notes right now. Because it's... Go ahead.
I just look at tying this back into the first hour.
Sure.
If the elites want to take away self-determination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's going against the laws of creation itself. So I don't see that ultimately coming to pass. Just because at this point in our development, there's going to be a massive fight against that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I don't think they're going to be successful. They're not going to have a complete success. But you guys are like salt of the earth. Because most people cannot think independently right now. I mean, and Billy will tell you that. We take this for granted. Okay, here, let me read this. Okay, on page 68, if this state is maintained further, then as a result of the continually negative thoughts, the feelings become correspondingly also negative and transmit themselves in this form to the psyche, where they become increasingly negative, increasingly unequalized, and finally disturbed and sick. So it's hard to draw a fine line between a thought and a feeling. You know what I'm saying?
But Mark, I think that describes where we're at right now in general.
Disturbed and sick. Yeah.
I mean, really though, when you think about it, what you just summarized, that's 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 right out of the newsreel.
Oh, it's so out of the newsreel. But I think there's a very small group of people all over the earth that are waking up to this material, and it's coming very, very slowly. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say the news in general is very, very negative.
Yeah. Yeah. So what this page is talking about is a vicious cycle in our thinking. We get into a psychical state where we're producing more and more negative thoughts and having more and more negative feelings. Our psyche becomes unequalized. It becomes a burden. And our life becomes disturbed. And I think we draw the environment into this misery. And we can take, since we got this habitual vicious cycle now, new burdens and conditions come in from the outside. So and then the whole life condition can become impaired. So this is what I think it's real important, at least it's been real helpful to me, to study these mechanics. You know what I'm talking about?
Again, it kind of goes back when you were talking about pre-World War II and, what was going on, what brought that to bear upon the world, right?
Wow.
So what are we entering right now is if history repeats itself, that do we not want to make those same mistakes again? If and you were saying that before, that you felt like there's this similarity for today.
Maybe that's why I have this subconscious. Maybe I'm struggling at night with some of these issues. Thank you. I mean, I feel drawn to like these old documentaries of the war in the Pacific, with where we're fighting on Iwo Jima and we're fighting on Saipan and we're fighting on there's a whole host of Wake Island and Truck Island and all these islands.
Are we possibly at the same crossroads in a sense?
I don't know. I feel that way. So, Lon, do you have any notions, thoughts?
I just relaxed when you were telling me these stories about bullets flying and whatnot, how uncomfortable I was.
Maybe I hit a previous life, a little impulse.
I don't know. Oh God, I hope not. But I mean, that is what it is then.
Yeah, but it does. There's a great instability in the psyche of the United States right now, as most people. Wouldn't you? Don't you think?
I think it's worldwide.
Ah, yeah, that's probably true.
I see some. Go ahead.
I missed what you said. Can you repeat that?
What I said?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's worldwide. I don't think it's just United States. I mean, I feel like just the climate itself is like a monster that everyone's having to deal with.
Did you say the climate?
Yeah, the climate problem.
Yeah. What did Frosty say? We are suffering from, what did he call a destabilized climate?
Yes. The climate catastrophe.
Yeah. So, because we've destroyed the forests, for example, and the forests are the moderators of the weather.
Yeah. Within this document, it talks about how swamps actually take CO2 out of the air.
Do they?
Yes, and I didn't know this. This was like a whole thing. He was talking about, he got this from Spot. He kind of goes into it a little bit, and he actually talks about as they die off, they actually release more. So we're actually causing it to get worse.
There's actually some swampy land around where I live. This is good to know.
Yeah, he said that it contributes to the lack of flooding. It also cools down the environment, and it just has all these great things. In the future, we'll actually know this. Apparently, we'll also be implementing them.
Do you have it sitting right in front of you? Could you find it?
Yeah, that was not. Just have to turn a bunch of pages here. Try to read this from printouts. Let's see here.
Will you continue to turn? I want to repeat a few of these important things to tell yourself if you feel like you're slipping into negative thinking. Say, I'm confident, I'm optimistic, I'm enthusiastic, I'm cheerful, I'm relaxed, I'm the master of my own destiny, I'm the forger of my own fortune, I create my own good luck. I do not allow my thoughts to drift on the ocean of life. I steer my thoughts. Like a captain steers his ship, I nurture my thoughts. I strengthen my thoughts. I organize my thoughts. I clarify my thoughts. It is the nature of the thoughts that by their might alone, every conceivable thing can be brought to fruition. Every thought that is enlivened by might and power must, as a cause, also bring a quite certain effect. And the effect of the thought is directly proportional to its might and power. My consciousness is like a garden filled with flourishing plants. The negative and the positive are two forces that belong together because they depend on one another and should never be separated. As a rule, suffering is an effect of some form of wrong thinking. Incidents of suffering in the life are indicators that the law of harmony has been broken and disregarded. When tangled ideas confuse the thoughts and cause them to go from one extreme to another, which creates a misdirection of the thoughts, which triggers emotions that can lead to murder and manslaughter. So these are some of the things that I've memorized from the Might of Thoughts book, and I'm working on another one that I will read to you right now. Hopefully, if I can find it. We're both looking in books right now. Oh, here it is.
I found mine, but...
And in the conscious use of the might of the thoughts, they show themselves their own capabilities and also prove that they have a means at their disposal with which they can form their futures and entire lives according to their own wishes and ideas. So everything that we just talked about right there is part of the third creational law, which is the law of harmony, harmony in your thinking. So we were talking about the creational natural laws. So, Solon, you found your little passages on swamps?
Yeah, I just want to say something that I found to be kind of really interesting about that.
Okay.
you said that if one is suffering, that is a sign that the law of harmony is
broken.
Is broken. And that's actually quite interesting because I had never really made that comparison, I guess.
Yes, it's like, absolutely. I think this is what you pointed out is so important. If you have any kind of suffering, you have to look at yourself first. Say, what is wrong in my thinking? So important. Always do that. Is there something is there some form of thinking that I have that isn't correct? And inadvertently, as a rule, suffering is an effect of some form of wrong thinking. That's straight from the book. Go ahead, Solon.
Well, I know Contact 10 talks about happiness being something is self-created.
There you go.
And so, yeah, which is kind of interesting because I find so many people searching for happiness outside themselves.
You know, one of the things that I think I have to do, and this goes with the second creational natural law, which is the law of striving. And it'd be interesting to know how things have manifested in your life as well. Like, if I do not keep up with my level of striving, for example, I almost have to, even if it's only 15 minutes a day, I almost have to continue at least 15 minutes a day every day studying something in the Maya material. And usually it's in the Maya thoughts. Because if I don't do that, I start to regress. And I feel myself regressing and having more negative thoughts, more negative feelings. It's like, after you get to a certain part of learning, you cannot go backwards without experiencing the negative aspect associated with that. Am I wrong there? What do you guys think?
Oh man, yeah, that's so true. Like, I have an example if you want one.
Sure, I love an example.
Well, I used to like rap music, I guess you could say, or pop music. And
really?
I put one of the CDs in, and I was like, because my iPod broke, and I was like, I'll see what it was like, and I put it in, and I started saying this, and I could feel my psyche getting into an uproar, and I was like, man, I must have been able to ignore this before, but now it's so strong that I have a hole in my stomach that I couldn't even listen to the music anymore.
So what you're saying is, what you used to listen to every day and enjoy, now you can sense the damage you're doing to your psyche from that music.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, but yeah, I just can't handle it.
Isn't it interesting that music can be such a positive influence or a negative influence in your life?
Oh man, yeah. Oh God, yeah.
So I mean, it can aid and help the psyche, or it can actually make the psyche more disturbed and sick. I work out at a gym that has mostly all powerlifters in it. Like, powerlifters are, the guys that, like, they grow big beards and they bang their head on the freaking bar and they try to lift them the most they can. That's a power lifter. Mm-hmm. And this music that plays in there is like the most unevolved stuff I've ever heard in my life. And I go in there and it's like I'm being tormented. It's like, I cannot wait to get my workout done just so I get out of that place.
Wow.
Have you ever heard any of this? They got this new, I can't even describe it. It's
depends on who my instructor is, but yeah, I've got some that like the metal stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like, now, which instructor are you talking about? Like martial arts or?
No, at the gym.
Trainer.
At the gym.
Yeah,
trainer. Yeah.
God, what is this stuff? I've never seen such a whatever it is they're listening to now.
Maybe I'm not that involved, but sometimes I like that angry music when I'm lifting.
Yeah.
Well,
it produces anger, is what it does, right?
Yeah.
It's the expression of anger.
Well, I think it does need to be said that everyone likes different type of music. I've learned this, and sometimes it's going to be disharmonious, and sometimes it'll be harmonious. But it fits what they're looking for at that particular point.
Yeah. You know,
it's kind of hard to lift to Barry Manilow. You know, I'm sorry, but
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. But man, sometimes
a little bowl beat's a little bit better. You know?
Yeah. Sometimes the you know, it's like I like some Metallica.
Oh yeah,
I really definitely do. Like I have certain arrangements I play on my classical guitar that are actually Metallica songs.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I just remember in the contact notes of them talking about how they like Michael Jackson music.
Really?
Was Spoth or Spat? No, it was Spoth, but Todd, I think, that enjoyed it with as well as Billy.
No kidding.
Yeah, they said it was harmonic, but I mean, you know.
That is very interesting. Man.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Okay, we were trying to get back to swamps.
Oh, okay. Now, what's explained here, this is also on number 10. This talks a lot about the CO2. He says what will happen in the future in this respect, and he's talking about that we'll understand this, that the climate impacts of the marshes will be very considerable. And he goes in to talk about how the marshes store carbon dioxide, and they also contribute to climate protection, which I was telling you, and he goes into some examples here, and one of the biggest ones for, I should say there's quite a few of them, but it's storing CO2. It also acts as a filter and as a reservoir. And so it also helps with the evaporation. So this also causes the less floods, which we're seeing more and more of now.
Oh, we are. You know, there's $1 billion worth of flood damage in the Midwest right now.
And I bet you anything we're damming more and more water up, so we're causing less and less marshes in general to appear.
Probably. You know, this is good to hear because the lake out here where I live, they've given up on it in terms of they used to have a dredger that would run all the time because the Licking River runs into this lake. And it looks like it will eventually become a good part of it will be a marsh, I think. So that might be a good thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Good. Definitely. I'm glad to hear that.
I actually have a friend who was telling me that here in North Carolina, they set up these waterways, and there's a company that sells all these plants that will put their roots into the ground, and they'll run water through there, and these plants will suck up like toxics and radiation, all kinds of things in their roots, and it actually cleans the water as it falls through it.
That's amazing. I need to get some of those.
Well, apparently they only sell to commercially to the developers and whatnot that are trying to clean up the ponds and lakes with these pollutions.
Wow. Have you ever considered selling trees?
Actually, I've considered growing a bunch of them and giving them to my neighbors for security purposes when it comes to a food shortage.
Really?
So I'm not too much into selling more than I would much rather all my neighbors have food and whatnot. Even if I have to teach them how it functions, I would be willing to do this because it would make me feel good inside, to be honest.
Man, you could send something to me in a heartbeat, I'm telling you.
Well, if you're my neighbor, you would definitely. I've actually talked to some of my neighbors about putting like orange trees and stuff in their front yard, and they were fine with it. So,
wow.
So
I would pay you if you'd send some to me.
Well, I can send you some seeds if you're interested, I guess.
Yeah, but isn't there a certain way you have to plant them? I mean, I just can't dig a hole and put them in, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I can teach you if you want me to, Mark. That's not a problem. I love this stuff. Honestly.
Yeah, because like I'm totally committed to getting as many trees around here as I can. And I have a lot of in one area of my yard here. I'm up on a hill, see, and I got like a forest area behind me, and then to my right is a farmer's field. But on the left side, there's a pond and some standing water. The pond's off. It's not on my property, but I have some real. You know, I've got like 30 trees, but it just seems like I need a lot more, just from my perspective. I want to turn it back into a forest, a little forest. That's what
sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to comment that, one of the things that China's doing is they're retaking some of the deserts by using nitrogen fixers. But I think they're using what's the sticks? Licorice sticks.
You mentioned that before. That is really bizarre. I don't know anything about that.
I constantly mention it because I think it's important that people understand that nitrogen fixers are like the hallmark of reclaiming things. And it's like, whenever I hear you talk about that, it's like the first thing I want to start mentioning is all those. And these also seem to be the most evolved plants that I have found. They do some of the most amazing things.
And they're called what again?
Nitrogen fixers. This is like a permaculture word.
Do they look like bushes or something? What do they look like?
You can get them in bushes, you can get them in trees, you can get them in grass. Like clovers is a nitrogen fixer. You have, I think the tree that Billy had in his office that died when he got sick was a mimosas. That's also a nitrogen fixer. The things that are taking over highways, like what are those kudzu vines, the wisteria, all those are nitrogen fixers. Like you're trying to reclaim the world.
Man, maybe we all need to be planting these.
Yeah, we'll be very careful because, like I said, they will take over. But I have done some research that they will compete underground when they're around one another. Instead of growing their limbs up high, they just start going into the ground and have competitions.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty intense plant.
Well, they all are very unique, and all they're trying to do is put nitrogen into the soil, and they have so many different functions in that. But they benefit with all the trees around them.
Are we missing nitrogen from our soil then?
So that's also covered in here is that you just told me you live beside of a field, and so what they do is they spray potassium, nitrogen, and I think it's phosphorus into the soil because that's what some of the main, and there's way more than that, ingredients that plants use. But nitrogen is the biggest. It's like protein for us, if you want to compare it.
So
you need that.
Would you consider that learning this information about the plants is kind of fulfilling the law of harmony?
Oh, definitely. Permaculture in general teaches you to pay attention to your environment. You need to figure out where your sun comes up, where it goes down. You need to know how to shade, what plants can shade, what plants love other plants, what soil type they like, what kind of, minerals this plant provides.
So maybe like Stephen had asked earlier about, the Plejaren and how they got out of this, how they stopped and got through their industrial revolution or whatever. Maybe they started learning like horticulture and about the plants, and maybe that is part of the law of harmony and the law of love. I mean, it's very practical.
Well, you look at biomimicry.
Well, I don't know anything about that. What is that?
It's like where you go to nature to solve a problem that you're working on. Give an example. I think Volvo used the swarming insects to. They studied them to integrate the technology to automatically brake so you don't hit another car.
Oh, really?
So they discovered that insects will make course adjustments when locusts are swarming, right? And they never hit each other. And they said, well, how does that happen? Well, their vision corrects their flight. Every time something comes in its field of vision, it'll make a slight course adjustment. And so they don't hit each other. Well, they integrated that into the car. Same thing with the flight suit for pilots. They learned that the giraffe, they wondered, well, how could a giraffe not lose consciousness when its heart is so far away from its head, right?
Wow.
So they integrated the constriction, how it keeps the blood to the center of the body, yeah. So stuff like that.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, Stephen, and I'm really glad you brought this stuff up too so long with this horticulture. Because permaculture. And the word perma, because we're trying to get to a permanent state.
It becomes permanent. Like the human being can walk away from it and it'll still be going on for years and years.
That's awesome. So do you have any of those nitrogen reclaimers growing right now on your property?
All over the place, yeah. And you don't have to go very far to do this. I mean, all right, so I don't know if you pay attention to what grows in the field that they do the crop rotation. You told me you had some farm around you, and I imagine...
Right. Okay. He does rotate it because I think, like, sometimes it's soybean, but, like, I don't think he didn't do anything last time. Like, he might have taken a year and just did hay or something like that.
So hay actually creates more soil. It's called organic. Organic matter, and so that actually creates nice loamy soil.
You know, have you ever heard of Timothy grass?
No, sir, I've never heard of it.
Okay, see, sometimes some animals will eat Timothy grass, and I got some of that. I usually get them corn, but I got this Timothy grass this time for the deer. Usually they'll eat corn. I'll just put corn out there. But they didn't want the Timothy grass. They didn't really like it. But it's so funny, as in an area that was a little barren, I put this Timothy grass down because it's where I put the corn down, and a lot of deer get in that area. But it seemed like I was raking some of that hay up, that Timothy grass, and there seems to be a lot of like green grass coming through on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar with what you were kind of getting at?
Yeah, so all that stuff breaks down into soil, essentially. I mean, that's what leads to, that's what a tree does when it falls in the forest and kind of decomposes and turns into more soil.
So you were saying I created soil then, potentially?
If you threw down any organic matter or even compost, you're creating soil.
That's fascinating. Could you do that? Could I do that kind of thing with my raised beds?
You would want it. Yes, you could. You'd have to give me more information than that. You wouldn't want to throw your food scraps in there.
No, I was thinking of, could you put something like hay or Timothy grass down, something like that?
Grass, if you need to cover the surface, because naturally nature covers the surface. It does not like it bare. Whenever something's bare, it's dead. And so nature comes in there and reclaims it with some type of grass, and they call this ground cover. So
I have, this is getting way off topic to a degree, but kind of, but kind of not. Like I have 6 raised beds, and I grow, vegetables and stuff in there. Have you worked with that sort of thing? How do I create better soil? What do I put on that? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, it depends on your climate. Like, for instance, I live in sand, and so my biggest issue is that I don't have anything that holds on the water. It just seeps right through. So I don't ever have floods here. But I do have lack of water. So what I'll do is I'm getting wood chips, and if you ever pay attention to wood chips, the top of it, yes, is dry, but when you put your hand underneath the chip, it's holding the moisture.
Yeah, we do that too. We do sometimes do that. So that's a good thing.
Yes, that's a great thing. And that also has minerals in it when it breaks down. So you're putting back minerals into your soil.
Okay.
It's healthy for raised beds, for sure.
Good. So
now, do you have clay?
No, I don't have. I have pretty good soil, but everyone's soil is probably low in nitrogen because we're continually using it all the time, right?
Yeah, but what you call weeds, these so-called weeds, a lot of these are nitrogen fixers. Like I said, cloves, mine also has the ability to put nutrients back into the soil. And these things grow wild. So nature's already doing this for us. We just need to observe what it is. What is this plant doing? And you can see what you need based off of just that.
Well, this is a great education because I think this is really what it's all about. We've got to do this. We can't keep burning 99 million barrels of oil every day. We can't, we've got to start becoming somewhat independent, don't we? Don't we have to understand and learn from nature?
Yeah, these fertilizers that we're using is destroying everything. I mean, they're ending up in the water systems, and that's destroying the water systems and creating these algae blooms. Yeah, we have to stop this.
And this ties back into the law of harmony.
No.
Learning all these things, because we're not living in a society that's using the law of harmony. We're living in a society that's destroying itself and destroying the planet.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you're right. We are.
Stephen, any comments? We're probably just about out of time.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
We may be off the air for all I know. I got 5:55, so we're probably right at the end of the show. But
I guess I got off a little bit, eh?
Yeah. We'll probably hear shortly. We'll hear a little music. It usually comes right around 6, I think. Well, maybe this is a good time to close out. We talked about the law of love. It refers to the highest form of love. It's effective love. That's the first creational natural law. The law of striving is the law of evolution. Without striving, there is no life. The third creational natural law is the law of harmony. We talked about that a little bit, but it's the bipolar structure composition of everything that exists, the positive and the negative. In your terms of your thinking, it's keeping neutral, positive, harmonious, balanced. There is a law of prosperity and abundance, which every life form, also the human being, has everything in plentiful abundance if we live according to these creational natural laws. The other one is the law of universal creation, which means that every thought enlivened by might and power must, as a cause, also bring a quite certain effect. And the effect of the thought is directly proportional to its might and power. So anyway, I think that's probably a good way to close it out. Any thoughts to... I think that's the music, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, guys. See you. So long.
So,
See you, Stephen. Bye-bye.